Good evening, televiewers. You're welcome to another edition of The Point on my Media Prime. This day we are going to be talking about so much talked about African Continental Free Trade Area, which is supposed to take effect or go operational on the 1st of January 2021. Lots and lots of efforts have been put by heads of states across Africa to see this dream come true. Many Africans are looking with lots of hope to get full benefits of the free trade area that is going to be taking place in Africa. Africa is going to become one single huge market that is expected to work in the interest of the African continent as they seek to stand the international competition from other continents like Europe, Asia, and America. Our guest in the program today is Bama Etienne Tam. He is an expert on international trade, based here in Cameroon, working with the Cameroon Shippers Council. He's one of the directors there. Mr. Bama Etienne Tam, we are glad to have you.
Thank you very much.
How is the Shippers Council?
Well, so far so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Merry Xmas to you and to all the televiewers watching us this evening. We hope that you spent a wonderful Christmas and also hoping that the new year is going to be excellent. Now, African Continental Free Trade Area is supposed to take effect as from the 1st of January. Many persons have been talking about, others are just commenting on it. What is this concept all about?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kum. The concept of the African Continental Free Trade Area is what they will call today the deeper trade integration.
Okay.
You know, since the creation of the World Trade Organization, Article 24 of GATT 1994 provides for countries to go beyond the most favored nation principle, which is the global trading scheme, where countries members of the WTO are allowed to trade among themselves. But now, debate and schools of thought came up with new concepts as they projected that at a certain moment, countries within the same geographic region could want to give themselves more advantages and integrate their markets to make huge benefit through regional value chains. And this concept of deeper trade integration came up. And it was in 2008 when 3 regional economic communities, the East Africa Community, COMESA, and SADC, came up with a program to integrate their 26 different economies into one large market. And when the success of negotiations triggered around the continent, the African Union thought they could emulate this at the continental level. And in 2012, during the extraordinary summit of the African Union head of state and government, a decision was taken for negotiations under the African Continental Free Trade Area to commence. And effectively in 2015, that negotiations started. And fast forward in 2018, March, precisely in Kigali, the agreement laying down the African Continental Free Trade Area was signed by 44 out of 55 African countries. And along with that, there was also a protocol on free movement on the continent, which are supporting instruments to the success of the AFCFTA. And last year, the agreement went into force with 22 countries ratifying the AFCFTA. So definitely here we are today due to the COVID pandemic. Trade was supposed to commence across physical borders. Physical trade across borders was supposed to start on the 1st of July, but due to the COVID pandemic, outstanding issues were not completed, and that's why we have 1st of January 2021 as the starting date of the AFCFTA.
Yes, starting date is January 1st, 2021. So much terms describing the concept for a mother who is producing tomatoes in Muya and another who is producing black beans in Kumbu, because they're watching us in Kumbu.
Yeah.
Yes, simply put, what is it all about? It means that we can now sell our goods everywhere in Africa?
Absolutely, yes.
Mm-hmm.
As of 1st January 2021, I'll take two practical cases and put them on board.
Okay.
You have SACU, which is Southern Africa Custom Union. You have UDIAC. These are the two outstanding groups, economic groupings on the continent, that have handed in their schedules of tariff concessions. Because you can't trade if there are no tariff lines. What are tariff lines? Simply put, they are, for example, the speaker has a tariff line at the level of the custom, where when you import, the custom will use that tariff line to know the percentage of custom duty that will be imposed on the microphone. So these are some of the packages that are being put in place, but SACU and UDIAC have gone past that stage. These are just the two regional groupings, regional economic units that have submitted theirs. And the negotiations at the level of rules of origin, which is what I can call the identity cards of the good, to exactly tell the customer at the border where the good is coming from. They are 80% negotiation rate in terms of the rules of origin. Coming back to your question, now a mother in Kumbo, her black beans, and the mother in Muyoka with her tomato, there is no doubt about this, because these are agricultural products. There is no value addition. You cannot debate with their origin. They will be able to move across the border if and only if in the negotiation package they have been accepted to trade on. Remember, agriculture is a very sensitive sector where countries do not want to depend on another country to feed its population. In case of conflict, how are they going to do? So most often, countries doesn't accept to negotiate agriculture as a package. They go to select those products in which they are not performant. They import, and now they supplement through their value chain.
If I get you very clearly, not every product that is produced in
on the continent
is going to benefit.
So that no.
Okay.
Let me come back to the technicalities of it. According to World Trade Organization GATS 1994 Article 24, for countries to subtract themselves from the most favored nation principle, they must trade among themselves at least 90% of the total tariff. That's all the products of the manufactured in the world are tariffied. They are put in lines. When you go in the custom book, you will see all products manufactured around the globe. So when they take a combination of all these products, 90% of it must be liberalized. And when you liberalize under the African Continental Free Trade Area, they have even gone past the ambition of 90%. They are targeting 97% in the next 18 years. So they have rolled out a phase-out schedule where from the onset they will start with 90%. There is another 7% that they call sensitive products. Remember, most of African economies rely on custom duties for their development agenda. So they won't just get up one morning and say 100% free trade among ourselves. That's quite something very difficult to understand. So what they have agreed is that they will liberalize 90% now, and the other 7% that they call sensitive products. And what are some of the sensitive products? You have, for example, clinker, which is used to manufacture cement. It generates a lot of money for government. So they won't want just to free this up. While they are adjusting their domestic market, they will be freeing up the 7% of sensitive products. And there is another 3% that is left to make up the total 100%, which is what they call list of exclusion. These are things they will not negotiate their liberalization. And what are some of these products? Arms, for example. There are conditionalities. You don't just sit down and say, this 3%, I will not accept to give it up. There are conditionalities, for example, on security issues, food self-sufficiency. Those are some of the grounds that the agreement itself allows room for people to subtract their products from negotiating. So that does not exclude the fact that Nigeria can tell Cameroon, let us go on a one-on-one basis to liberalize our agricultural sector. That is possible. They can do that. Because when they look at their production pattern, they can do that, and then they can work on quota. They can say, okay, since we are producing, for example, 10 tons of tomato per year, whereas we need 15 tons, we will give you access to our market for 5 tons.
Now, this is coming in, say, 2021.
Yes.
What kept Africa from taking full benefit of what other continents have been using so far, like the EU and the US?
Yes, it's quite a challenging task. Remember, markets have their specific regulations. If you take a look at EU now and Brexit, could you imagine this debate will go this long and that tough? Standards. No country will allow any type of product to move into the economy. It's about health issues. Each country, depending on their geographic region, they provide their standards on the type of goods they will import into the country. Take, for example, in Nigeria, you have NAFDA. That's their Food and Drug Administration. Before you import a product in Nigeria from another country, it must go through a process of certification. And this product, they will give you an index. This product under NAFDA compliance can enter the Nigerian market. So taking the EU market, these are people who are 100 years ahead in terms of standards. And at times these standards become non-tariff barriers. They become obstacles to trade. The EPA agreement, today most of the goods, I can give you a figure, in 2017, before July or August, we had 127 reshipments from Europe for non-compliance. That's goods that were shipped to Europe and they were sent back.
They were rejected.
Yes, because they were not in compliance with the EU standards. So you see some of the challenges that we are facing. It's not all about saying you have free access to the market in terms of tariffs. Tariffs today are not even one of the most complex issues that allow access into market. But when you look at standards, norms, these are things that they hamper free trade.
Yeah, these are technicalities you are bringing to the knowledge of our televiewers, to say that when they say free trade, Africa is going to be a single market. It's still going to be complex. Because before a good leaves one country to the other, they need to meet the standard set in this.
Yeah, but that problem has been solutioned within the context of the African Continental Free Trade Area. There will be what they call harmonization. They will harmonize a continental standardization scheme. Because if you have to comply with 54 countries, you imagine the cost of the product. Imagine you have a product that is demanded across the board on the continent. You want to go to, for example, Kenya, you need to comply with Kenyan standard, South Africa, South African standard. So this issue has been addressed by harmonization. So they work out a global scheme on the continent where once you comply with it, you can sell across the continent.
Yeah, but harmonization, does it work for the custom duties across the continent?
Yes, it works. Few weeks back, all custom agencies on the continent were working out what they call custom compliance at the border under the African Continental Free Trade Area. That document will be rolled out for all countries. When you're exporting under the African Continental Free Trade Area or importing, you just need to fill that form. And once it goes to the custom officer, they are trained for that, they'll be able to make it easier for you.
But this applies only for imports and exports within Africa?
African-made goods. Let's be clear on that. No transshipment. You can't bring a good from China and you import it to South Africa, you want to ship it to Cameroon. It won't work. That good will face what they call the rule of origin. They'll have to do an analysis to declare that that goods comes from South Africa. And it is for South African authorities to ascertain the veracity of that goods being manufactured. Remember, when you pick up a good, you'll see made in China, made in South Africa. That's the first package. And now you need a certificate of origin. That certificate of origin now, in order to secure it, there is a strong debate on an electronic certificate of origin to be adopted on the continent so that administrations work within themselves. You don't need to carry documents and go to the border. Once they know that in Cameroon is the custom that verifies the certificate of origin, South African custom will send it directly to Cameroon custom or put it in a platform where they can view and ascertain to it.
Yeah, many actually are describing what's happening as historic. I don't know how historic it is, but some people are also very skeptical when they consider what was agreed in CMAC as far as free movement of persons and goods are concerned. But to date, we see fine countries that are not favorable to what they agreed on.
Yes. Oh, you're quite taking a good example in the case of CEMAC, but I would like us to look at it at the level of ECAS, which is a rate that is recognized at the level of the African Union. Security challenges, you won't deny that fact. Adhering to signing into a free trade agreement doesn't gives you that latitude to forget about your security challenges, and that's one of the strongest challenges today in terms of cross-border data sharing. Remember, even within our context here now, in the case of Central African Republic, there are rebels there actually who are posing a serious threat to free movement of goods. The latest information I have with this border is that as of yesterday, about 700 trucks were being blocked at the border at Garoua-Bolai. So you see, that's a real challenge that you cannot deny. You won't ask Central African authorities to say, no, we have free trade, please, you have to allow these trucks to come in. There is a war going on in that country. So these are some of the problems that have been facing ECAS.
Up north with Boko Haram.
Perfect. Those are some of the illustrations of the challenges we are going to face. But to address the question of trade on the free movement of goods, like the cases we have in other countries, getting up in the morning and saying you cannot enter my country again, they close their borders. No. There is a monitoring mechanism that has been put in place with the African Continental Free Trade Area, wherein you can report directly a case of a country refusing your good to enter their country, whereas they have signed up to, ratified, and deposited their instrument of ratification within the African Union Commission. So there is a real-time reporting mechanism that has been put in place, where you can send in your report. That report will be viewed by the authority in your country, your focal point, who will now send it to the REC, and the REC will send it now to the Secretariat of the AFCFTA in Accra.
I'm sure the prayers for every African Cameroonian particularly is that the REC, as you call it, should not serve as another CONAC. We understand what is happening in Cameroon, where they say if you have a problem, call CONAC, and CONAC can intervene. But you know that CONAC does not have the powers now.
Yeah. Mr. Kamer, you know, with international treaties and agreements, the case is quite different. That's why there is an internal, a domestic process to accept that we are coming as a free nation to this agreement. The AFCFTA agreement went through Parliament. The Parliament gave their approval and it was ratified by the head of state. That is a domestication process of the agreement. And once you do that, you are not more answerable now to your domestic legal system, but to the international judicial system. Though in domain of trade, we go much more for mediation and some sort of a consensus. We don't go for maybe a court where a country will be sanctioned and you say you have to jail the country. It doesn't happen in international law. So I think Cameroon, first of all, for its credibility and those who are coming onto this agreement, they have worked out a plan at the domestic level. Take the case of Cameroon EU. Remember, due to COVID-19, a force majeure, Cameroon had to notify EU that we are suspending the fifth phase of implementation of the Economic Partnership Agreement. Everything is found in the agreement. When you're facing challenges that you cannot withstand them, you have the right to ask to notify your colleagues or the other state parties that you are suspending a temporary suspension of the implementation of the agreement.
Let's look at the case of EPA. Now, Cameroon is doing business with EPA under a particular partnership agreement between Cameroon and the European Union. But Cameroon finds itself in a common market with other African nations. How does it work?
Yes, there was that principle of negotiating together. The difficulty is that we have diversified economies. Cameroon, in the CEMAC sub-region, is the lead economy. And when Cameroon carried out a survey or a study on the impact of losing out these privileged access into European market, the consequences were far more than the other countries in the CEMAC sub-region. For example, our banana export to EU is competitive as compared to the Latin American banana, thanks to the free access into EU market. Imagine a situation where just in the morning you get up and they say this Cameroon banana has to pay 15% custom duties in the EU market. Where do we go? Where do we go? The banana will be stuck at the border. Remember, the market is integrated on a certain principle, like what the UK and the EU were debating on a level playing ground. The buyers are buying from Cameroon because it is a product that enjoys free access into the EU market. Just of a sudden you tell them that you have to pay 19% custom duty. It wouldn't work like that. They'll have to look for alternative markets.
Yeah, but
and abandon your banana. And now the producers in CDC, what do? Banana is a perishable product. It is stranded there at the port of Marseille. And remember, banana is a perishable product that is shipped in frigorified containers, refrigerated containers. When they are stocked there at the port of Marseille and connected, the bills they are paying per day for keeping them electrified is a huge bill that at the end will be carried on the cost of the banana. So these are some of the aspects that Cameroon had analyzed and say, okay, we cannot follow the common position of CEMAC. We need to look at our particular situation. They informed CEMAC that our situation is particular. We cannot stand alone. It's the same thing with EAC, where Kenya signed a loan. Even now with the US, Kenya is negotiating a loan. It is based on Kenyan tea that they are exporting and other products. They look at their market and say, we should be very careful. If we are following orders, they have maybe alternative products that they can sell, even with tariffs into this market. So these are some of the challenges in negotiating as a bloc. And even that's the challenge that AFCFTA was still facing on the continent. There was a group of 6 that came up and said, our economies are not the same like others. We will not be negotiating on the same footing with other countries. But at the end, they came up with a consensus and said, oh, we won't want to use this concept of the World Trade Organization where they say developing countries, least developing countries, and they start giving you special and differential treatment. They say, okay, let's go as one, and we'll see an understanding within ourselves. And that is why a package was proposed, $1 billion by Afri-Exim Bank to support countries in this transition period who might be losing out from custom duties and having key challenges.
Yes, that's what I wanted to ask. Now, free trade amongst African states would mean that countries would need to forfeit some level of revenue that were gotten through
intra-African trade.
Yes, through custom duties. How do you compensate for that?
Look at the percentage of intra-African trade. We are talking here about 16 to 17% intra-African trade. The lowest when you look at regional trade across the globe. Mercosur, Latin America, EU, Asian countries, North America, we are the lowest. 17% of global trade of the continent is done within Africa. And the highest of this is done within SACU, the Southern African Custom Union, because they are one market cooperating. So losing out, studies were carried out both by UNECA and other regional economic communities. The impact is not huge, though it is not zero. You know, once we go with 0.1, the impact is there. It is real, and we need to address it. So now this compensation mechanism came up through the Afri-Exim Bank, where they've proposed a package of $1 billion to support these economies that will be facing a huge backdrop because of trade liberalization. But again, look at the impact of the trade in terms of industrial policy. You're freeing up your borders. What are you gaining? Intermediate goods for your industry to develop. And in the negotiation process, countries are negotiating, they are freeing up goods that they are not best at producing. And they are putting obstacles, barriers on goods that they think fit that they can produce. And much more, one aspect of this continental free trade area that we need to look at is regional value chains. We are producing tomato in Cameroon. For example, we are not transforming that tomato. Nigeria is having a transformation unit, but they don't have enough tomato to transform. Now they buy from Cameroon, do the transformation, and send it back as tomato paste in Cameroon. That is one aspect on which negotiators are building their argument at the level of the continent. Because basically, things that we can produce on the continent using regional value chains are being imported from elsewhere. Look at tomato. Canned tomato is imported from China, from Italy. Whereas in Nigeria today, there are production units that are growing to transfer.
Are we saying that there is going to a list of goods that are supposed to be considered as benefiting from?
Yes.
This is going to be made public?
Yes.
Because One of the cases of if Chinese companies were to get themselves implanted in Africa, or US companies, European companies, and start producing in Africa to sell in Africa.
Yes. That comes to address the problem of a protocol on investment. The African Continental Free Trade Area is a whole package with components in it, and there's a component that addresses investment issues. Because negotiators, they understood or they understand that when we are talking about industrialization, foreign direct investment has a role to play. Now when you are investing on the continent, what must you do? The rule of origin. Even if you have to import part of your product somewhere, if the rule of origin has been agreed to be 60% African content, because when they say rule of origin, the 55 African countries, you can pick up from Ghana, from Kenya, from South Africa, and assemble in Cameroon. That is eligible to be traded under the African Continental Free Trade Area, because these countries are state parties to the agreement. But then you cannot pick from China, from America, from Europe, and come and assemble in Africa to sell in Africa. It doesn't work like that. The local content component must be respected. And that's where South Africa was arguing for 80%. That what we should call local content on the continent should be 80%. Other countries were saying you're talking about 80% because you're industrialized.
Yeah, you are.
Where are we going to take 80% of a local content? So that debate was on, and I think now we are closer to a deal, and there has been a lot of reflection on what will benefit Africa, because that is the baseline. What will benefit Africa?
In this case, not every country is going to reap benefits. Countries that are producing, countries like South Africa,
absolutely,
Nigeria,
Egypt,
yes,
Kenya. Those are the big countries in on the continent. It is not only about going to trade. Once you sign an agreement like the AFCFTA, there are domestic reforms you have to carry out. First of all, you have to readjust your legal organization to fit in the convention or the agreement you have signed. Our country is doing that. And then you have to design a national strategy. The truth is that the 55 countries cannot make benefit from the AFCFTA at the same level. Impossible. That cannot happen. But now, how do you maximize the benefit for signing on to the AFCFTA? That is the question. How will it move you from your present state to participate on trade within the continent? Maybe at a level of 5% to 15% for the first 5 years, 25% for the next 10 years, and maybe in a target of 50 years, you are 60%. Because the truth is that when you look at the gravity model in economics in terms of trade, countries tend to trade more with their neighbors than countries that are further away. Look at the case. On the continent, our first trading partner in terms of export is Chad. It's Chad. And our first importing countries from the continent is Nigeria. When you look at the trade that is not documented, like trade through flour, that's undocumented trade. How do you account for that? So these are some of the issues. Countries cannot make benefit, but how can you move from your present state to an acceptable state? Create employment for your young population, attract foreign direct investment, be able to compete with your goods, or now serve as an industrial basket for neighboring countries, where they source now their raw material from your country. Look at, for example, the quantity of timber that is transiting through the port of Douala from Central African Republic and Northern Congo. If under the African Continental Free Trade Area, wood products, furniture is part of the deal, a country can easily settle in Cameroon. Instead of exporting timber, will now be exporting furniture, like cupboard, office furniture, and all those things.
And supply the internal market.
That is
because most of the furniture that is used in...
It's imported. We export wood and import biowood. So investors are eyeing the continent, and they are looking for strategic locations. Now it is for us to develop what investors want. First, our doing business rating. We must work on that in terms of energy supply. Industries, when they are coming today, they are coming with machineries that need stable energy supply. Our legislative system must be able to sit up to task and provide us with legislation that can inspire confidence from our investors. The judicial system, the fiscal policy, which is attractive, and that is the case with our investment code. It is very attractive.
Okay. Now, how important is the African of what we see others do?
It's a giant market. 1.3 billion consumers of how the African market is large. And now in these supermarkets and malls, we look at the percentage of products that are manufactured locally. There is an increasing margin. And I think this is one of the aspects that is being addressed between our authorities and those who are investing in this sector. Now look at the regional economic communities to have a better understanding of how large the African market is. We look at ECOWAS, close to 400 million consumers. You look at the case of ECAS, the Economic Community for Central African State, with DR Congo included, where they have about 75 million consumers. We are talking here of a market of about 150 million consumers, majority of whom are young persons with an increasing purchasing power. For example, just take the case of the Nigerian market. It's a market where the consumption power is increasing at an astronomical rate. And that is one of the factors on which investors rely to come into the market. Take, for example, the market penetration of telephone on the continent. Phenomenal with new developments like mobile money. Those are some of the elements that gives you a picture of how African market is very dynamic.
Very, very, very dynamic. How are other single markets across the globe eyeing developments in Africa? I'm talking about markets like the EU. Are they coming to realize that Africa is finally getting up from slumber?
Yes, definitely, yes. Because when you look at Europe, what Europe is producing, they can no more sell in Africa, in Asia, sorry. They are the same goods that are produced in Asia, which is the continent where industrialization really is very low. It's Africa. I'll come back to take the case of the implantation of supermarkets in the continent. When did they start coming? After 2016, when Cameroon signed on to the Economic Partnership Agreement and started liberalizing trade with EU. That's where the supermarkets came in. Why? Because they could move goods from Europe to Cameroon duty-free and be able to compete with Chinese goods.
Yeah, but how do we benefit from that?
That is the question.
Is that not a direct competition to homemade goods?
It's reciprocal. Remember, with the EU, we have 80% trade liberalization. We've liberalized our trade with the EU on 80% basis. How do we look at trade with EU as beneficial to Cameroon? We export products to EU duty-free. I'll still come back to the concept of duty-free. Our cotton, banana, rubber. These are products that we export to the EU. Aluminium from aluminum is exported to the EU, duty-free. Now, EU is exporting finished product to Cameroon while we are exporting raw material to EU. How do we do now to change the balance? Let the free trade agreement work in our favor. We have to put in place an industrial development master plan. And I think that's what the government has done. We have industrial development master plan in place. How do we work on it? I'll come back to talk about the grand realization concept of the head of state, where he focused on energy development. Energy development was to put an industrial base available. For example, for a company that is coming in to transform wood. It's a giant investment. They need that energy. That's why they were the Lompanga, the Making, the Memvele, to supplement energy demand.
Yeah, but they are not yet
they're not yet operational, but work is on course.
Okay.
Yes. So now, these companies, we have to work on this industrial development plan in order to carry out a study on the imports that are coming out from EU into our market and work on it. Because first of all, for you to succeed in a free trade agreement, you must first of all be able to supply your domestic market. Work on your domestic market. When you fill the market, Now you start looking at opportunities elsewhere. Where do I go to? Who are competitors in this market? There is a lot to be done. We have to be sincere to ourselves. With the economic partnership agreement, there is a lot to be done. If we keep on at the current pace, we might basically continue to create ghost companies that are crumbling down in our domestic market.
Yeah, but is the reality not also the fact that, as we speak, many African countries are more of consumer countries than producing countries?
We come back to industrial policy.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Africa back in the 60s, where a lot of industrialization occurred on the continent.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, in the 80s, with the drop in price of basic commodities, countries could not more raise the needed money for their economic development.
Yes, with this
and we came in with the structural adjustment programs,
yeah,
where now we lose our policy space. This is very important. We couldn't decide again. There was diktat from Bretton Woods Institution who now told us what to do, where to borrow, where to spend, what is priority for us. They started telling us what are our priorities. Education was no more a priority because teachers were no more treated as teachers. Recruitment to the education sector was something the World Bank had to approve and give money. So we lose our policy space. We could no more decide on what to do in our economies. Everything was boring.
Yeah, I read somewhere by the officials of the trade area that is going to be created, or that has been created already, that this is historic because henceforth the destiny of Africa is going to be decided by Africans. Are they saying that before now prices, markets, and almost everything was determined from out of Africa?
No, what they're saying is simply because this is an Africa conceived project from start to finish. Mm-hmm. Partners are just coming into support compared to other programs which are designed out of Africa and imposed on Africa. Mm-hmm. Take, for example, the Millennium Development Goals. Those are things that are decided in Washington. And now the world has to move for the next 15 years on this platform. But Africa sat down among themselves and said, now we need to integrate our market. Very few people could believe. So it is an African-born project. And that's why you've seen the rate of success. Historic because never before on the continent had African countries signed on to an agreement in this record time, 1 year, from signature to ratification and operationalization. 1 year. It has never happened on the continent. And how many countries? 44 for signing on to and 22 for ratification. That is it. 2 years later, we are in 2020. Mm-hmm. We are talking about 34 countries today that have ratified and deposited their instrument of ratification. 2 years later.
Now, how will it function for televiewers who are watching us? Many guys are producing in Cameroon. They are understanding that a free trade area has been created in Africa, and they may want to go do business in Chad, in Gabon, and what's the process?
Yeah, the process is simple. Pick up the tariff book.
Okay.
Look at the products of your domain in the tariff book. Which are those countries that have liberalized these products to be treated tariff-free in their economies? And once you do that, take the book on the rules of origin. Look at what is the local content requirement of your products. These two elements are what we call within the trade jargons outstanding issues now within the framework of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Okay. Without which you cannot trade. Mm-hmm. These two elements are fundamental and they are key. Once you qualify for it, it doesn't mean that you cannot import part of your product from China. You can do. You can't do. Remember, we are in a global economy where countries intertrade. You can import a percentage, but then you must be able to look at the content which is allowed for in the book of the rules of origin requirement. That's capital. Once you look at that, you are able to trade. But for the moment, from 1st of January, the two economic groupings that are ready for trade, as per information now available, is SACU and UDIAC. Yep. So we should be proud at the level of Central Africa that we are part of the frontrunners of this African project.
Every country is going to be rushing to boost home production through industrialization, like you are saying. But isn't it also imperative or very important for African states to do what I may describe as an overhaul in their fiscal or taxation policies that actually facilitates the creation of industrialization or small, medium-sized companies?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kum. This is a point that has been addressed by our investment code,
okay,
even the fiscal law of the country. We have tax holidays for SMEs that are setting up in Cameroon up to 5 years. Follow the process. As simple as that, follow the process. There are some companies that have been supporting on their drive to engage in international markets that are setting up in the country. Young graduates who are building their businesses to trade under the African Continental Free Trade Area. Follow the process. There are incentives in the investment code in the country. Once you are using local content, take for example, I was reading through information about a hotel that has been constructed closer to the airport. That hotel construction has been supported by the Investment Promotion Agency, where their material for the construction were brought in without paying custom duties. Follow the process. There are a lot of incentives, just that people are not aware. Go towards expert, fiscal experts. They'll be able to give you the package.
Okay, so business persons are supposed to actually do some findings here.
Yes.
Meet experts.
Yes. And this is one problem. I participated in one pitch program for female entrepreneurship some few weeks back. Cameroonian, most SMEs, I understand the challenges they are facing, especially financial challenges. They don't have this tendency of going towards experts to seek information before implanting their businesses. You see a person, the person is the CEO and founder, the finance controller, at the same time the marketing manager, the logistic expert. It doesn't work like that.
The communication officer.
That is it. It doesn't work like that. Present yourself. And there were people in the pitch competition who were ready. We even had to bring in coaches who did coaching free of charge and told them that they are ready to accompany them free of charge. And once business start moving, now you can sign on to a contract. Those are some of the problems that are facing our businesses. They don't go for information. At times you see somebody who wants to export. It is only when the products are at the port, the person starts finding information on the procedure to export.
Now, this is going into effect from January the 1st. Would this in any way alter any previous international agreement by some states?
No.
Okay.
In terms of trade agreement, you know, what the African Continental Free Trade Agreement seeks to secure is that if out of the context of this agreement, any state party is granting more favorable condition to an outsider, when I say outsider is a non-African state.
Okay.
That same condition must apply to all the state parties of the African Continental Free Trade Area. They are securing their interests. Because it might happen, for example, that Cameroon wants to trade with Brazil, and maybe they have a lot of opportunities they are envisaging to explore, and Cameroon tell Brazil will go 100% from the start. If the AFCFTA is not yet on 100%, Cameroon will have to grant all the state parties of the AFCFTA 100%.
Okay.
The same as they are doing to Brazil. So these are some of the securities that the AFCFTA has sought to protect, because if they don't do, the internal market will be collapsing to the advantage of external markets out of the agreement. So saying that the AFCFTA might compromise other agreements, no. And that is one of the things that all countries that will be coming to negotiate with African countries now, you must align your negotiation with the AFCFTA. The case of Kenya and the US. The US must, and even I will take the case of the UK-Kenya trade agreement. they have provided for. That is the post-EPA. The post-EPA, that's the EPA plus plus, as they call it, between Kenya and the UK. They have provided for room for the other countries to sign on to the agreement at a later date. So they are aligning now the EU-UK trade agreement to the continental agenda, which is market integration. So there's room for others to sign on to it. If they read the agreement, they carry out a detailed screening of the agreement, they think that they can fit onto it, they are free to sign up to the agreement whatever moment they deem fit to do so.
Is this in any way going to reduce over-importation from across the globe?
Yes,
and
that is
grow the African economy?
Yes, definitely. That is one of the baseline of the AFCFTA, to seek to produce more on the continent. And that is why, when you are looking at the AFCFTA, don't look at AFCFTA on an isolated basis. There are other supporting programs of the African Union. For example, you look at the IDA, Accelerating Industrial Development in Africa. It's a program of the African Union. When you look at PIDA, Program for Infrastructural Development, it's a program. When you look at SAD, Comprehensive Agricultural Development Program, those are programs of the African Union that seeks to support. They are all integrated. When you look at the protocol on the free movement, even air transport, there is another argument on air transport, because there is the belief that when people move, there is business prospection and all those type of things. And then we cannot keep maintaining visa requirements for fellow Africans to move while giving more favorable conditions to outsiders from the continent. So there was an argument on air transport and free movement protocol in order to bring this aspect and boost another sector, which is the air transport sector, tourism, and other services sectors. So it's a whole package. The AFCFTA is just one of the elements on the Agenda 2063 of the African Union. So when we look at it in a broader spectrum, we have the understanding that there are other components that seeks to supplement the AFCFTA for a wider benefit of the state parties.
Now, I want us to be very clear about this custom tariffs. Are we saying that all countries that have signed to this are going to maintain same custom duty?
Yes, that is one of the essence of a free trade area. First, tariffs. You suppress tariffs. That's automatic. And that's why the process now, one of the most difficult issues in negotiating that trade agreement now, as we are talking, is tariff concession. The concede tariff, that's the liberalized tariffs. And I said, UDEC have already submitted their tariff line, that in this list of products, will no more seek to ask custom duties from all of these products manufactured on the continent. They are categorical. And that is it. With the EU, that's what we've been practicing for the past 4 years.
Yeah, but can we also think or believe that henceforth trade agreements with the world is going to be done by a single African bloc?
No. Remember the principle of sovereignty. Countries are free to still negotiate trade agreements with third parties.
Okay.
Like what Kenya is doing now. They're still free to do that. And that's why, in order to secure the interests of the AFCFTA, the agreement provides for the same condition you are giving if they are more favorable. If you give a more favorable condition, like Kenya giving a more favorable condition to the US, automatically African countries will benefit from that same treatment. Yeah. So they still withhold their sovereignty to negotiate. Remember, international agreements are negotiated by sovereign states.
Okay. If it is hoped that competitiveness at the level of industry and enterprise level will be enhanced by exploiting opportunities for scale, will this also have to do with good governance? Because if you hope to get all of this, if the policies that define the way nations are run in Africa does not change, virtually nothing is going to benefit the population.
Yeah, the gendarme of an international agreement is the instituting organ, the secretariat. Let's focus on the African Continental Free Trade area, where a secretariat has been put in place to monitor the implementation process. There is even a protocol on dispute resolutions. Yes.
But we know how African institutions work now. We have the AU in Africa. The AU is even financed by.
Yeah, when you look at this agreement, the possibility is that if the dispute resolution doesn't address the problem squarely, the World Trade Organization remains the last body. I don't think I love the World Trade Organization. And the truth is that the capacity building program, because most often the problem is capacity. Do we have the capacity to implement this agreement? That calls for the development and the definition of a program that will seek to address the capacity gap, the skills gap on the continent in terms of trade issues. This will come to one point that I want to really deal with. You know, for Cameroon to carry a dispute on trade issues to the AFCFTA Secretariat, the first person to bring that dispute is the company that feels affected by importation of a like product that they are producing. Let me take a case.
Unfair competition?
That's one of the cases. Let me take, for example, you are producing televisions in Cameroon, and the country is producing televisions, for example, Kenya. In terms of international trade, we don't look at you as an individual. We look at Cameroon. They say that's why the product is made in Cameroon. It is Cameroon that will be going for dispute, not you. And presently in Cameroon, there is no institution that can carry out an investigation. For example, if you are talking about dumping, because that's one of the aspects on which a dispute can be claimed. Dumping. If Kenya is producing TV and Leonard in Cameroon is producing TVs, and they are importing televisions from Kenya and selling them in Cameroon, the same TV you are producing in Cameroon, selling, for example, 100 francs, and somebody is importing the similar goods from Kenya and selling in Cameroon for 80 francs. There is a problem. That will raise your eyebrows. You will now turn to government and say, hey, please, I don't understand. When you liberalize trade, these people were bringing in TVs from Kenya. I had about 200 staff working for my company. And 2 years after the implementation of this agreement, I'm left with 15 staff working. There is a problem, and they are selling their TVs in the market for 80 francs. I'm suffering. I might close down. Now the competition authority is the taker organ of the government that will have to investigate right down to Kenya to identify where the problem is. Is there actually dumping? They will have to determine if there's dumping. The movement come and say, we want to see the invoices of this company producing television.
Yeah, but the Cameroonian authorities are supposed to be also known for allowing that.
I'm talking about capacity, institutional capacity, as well as individual capacity. There's work on progress. Look at the National Development Strategy. Those institutions are earmarked for 2021, 2022 to be put in place. Because you can't trade on a market like the AFCFTA without these institutions. First, you will need an export promotion agency. You'll be working in line with a national implementation strategy. Because you definitely need a strategy where you identify the key sectors in which you have to trade. Under the AFCFTA market, you have to identify the sectors, bring the stakeholders on board, identify the challenges they are facing. Is it capacity problem, financial, infrastructure, farm to market route, industrial capacity? The first 5 years, the next 10 years, the 15 or so, or you might be working on an annual basis.
Where are we with the process? Because as we understand it.
He was elected as a South African young guy, His Excellency Kmer. He is fully on board, and since COVID-19 pandemic will not allow people to physically meet, their platforms that were created. There have been Zoom, the negotiating forum was carried from the physical to the digital. They have been negotiating, they have been holding meetings, and work is in progress. A lot of work has been done since the 1st of January.
Are there reasons to fear that what happened with the ECHO could happen with
the AFCFTA?
Yes.
No. The January deadline. The January deadline is untouchable, as I can say. It's untouchable. A lot of work has been done. A lot of distance has been covered.
Do you fear, like other persons, that some African states may be used by foreign powers like Cote d'Ivoire was used to puncture the
Within the context of the AFCA, I don't want to be a pessimist, because even in our forums where we were meeting to discuss AFCFTA issues, people were like, Nigeria will not come on board. I think they don't seem to see the image, the mirror, how AFCFTA is projecting Africa behind, not even ahead of us. Nigeria could not stay out. Nigeria is one of the first beneficiaries of the AFCFTA argument. What the problem was Nigeria was that the consultation process within the country was not well organized. And once that was done, it is the Nigerian Association of Manufacturers, NAM, that started telling the government, please, you have to sign on to this agreement, ratify it, and that was done.
Yeah, because it opens them up to the African market.
It opens them up to the African market. And the level of industrialization now in Nigeria is unprecedented. They are doing a tremendous work to be ready for the AFCFTA trade.
Cameroon should do the same.
We are doing. Take a walk down into our supermarkets. Target Cameroon products. You have an understanding that a lot of change has been recorded.
But we should get Mekim, Lompanga, and Memveli operational now, so that
I think if Sonatrach is there to transport energy, definitely there is the hope that making Memvele and others are going to unleash energy in the months ahead.
Okay, we have come to the end of this edition of the program, but I'm sure some persons joined us in the course of the program. Can you refresh our televiewers on what we are talking about? That from January the 1st, this is...
Yeah, actually, the whole issue is that from January 1st, 2021, Africa is definitely opening up its borders to trade with itself, duty-free. But one thing I must say before leaving, Mr. Kum, is that it is not because we have free tariffs for trade among ourselves that everything will go like, wow. There are non-tariff barriers to trade.
Okay.
The cost of moving a truck, for example, from Douala to Jamena, is 3 times the cost of moving a container from Europe to Douala. How do we solve this problem? Control positions along the way. The time consumed and the money, the additional cost of transport, illegal charges. How do we solve this problem? And that's what I was talking about, domesticating an argument and doing institutional reforms.
Yeah, but the government should do something on that, because consistently we've heard most of these guys who do transportation along the Douala and Jamena, Douala Bangui corridors. They keep complaining.
Yeah. Yeah. So these are the things we now need to address. If we don't address them, we have not done anything.
Which comes back to the policies I've talked about.
There will definitely be reforms. There are support programs, for example, the construction of one-stop border posts, which is a concept that is well developed in East Africa. One-stop border post now seeks to integrate border agencies of countries, neighboring countries, into one infrastructure, where they will be obliged to use digital services. Okay. Everything is computerized. Once you receive documents here, you put them in your system. Everybody will see it on the computer. You don't need to see the individual, the exporter or the importer again. No. So there are pilot programs.
So when you leave Douala, you are moving straight to N'Djamena.
You are moving to N'Djamena, yes. The information that has been collected at the level of the custom will send directly to the border. And now just move to the border and everything will process there.
But our uniform men need to be told not to disturb these guys also.
It's a global package. We have to reform at all levels as far as trade is concerned.
Okay. We want to say we are very grateful that you answered present for today's edition of The Point, and we equally are very, very happy that you took out time to explain this whole concept to our televiewers. We hope they got the information. If you missed this edition of the program, it's going to be yours again on Thursday, 1 p.m. on my Media Prime. We want to thank you all who took time off to watch the program. Special thank you to you. Eli, who is producing the program, and Bertrand, who is at the broadcasting, and to you, Tabi Tambe Bryant, who is supervising our work out here. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.